Buenos días. Good morning. Bonjour. Comment allez-vous aujourd'hui? We're going all over the world with languages and everything else today because we are talking about channel text. And of course, channel texts come in different languages and sizes and interpretations. And we're going to get into it today. Are channel texts an authentic source of wisdom or supply of wisdom? I am your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. Welcome to the Daily Huddle Thursday Spiritual Matters. And I have a quote for you today. The quote is from Michael A. Singer, one of my favorite authors. And he says, "There is nothing more important to true growth than realizing that you are not the voice of the mind. You are the one who hears it." Welcome to the Daily Huddle.
I love that quote.
Welcome to the Daily Huddle Spiritual Matters Thursday. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and I'm so excited that you are all here. We're going to have a very, very juicy, perhaps even controversial conversation today, because we are delving into some topic today that we had not previously delved into in spiritual matters. We're talking about channel texts. Before we do that, I want to get us all grounded into the present moment. So, Stacey, since I haven't seen your face in a month of Sundays, I'm going to start with you. How are you, and what are you thankful for today?
How am I? I am how I say I am. And I am excited. I am very, very excited. And what am I grateful for? I am grateful that my wife and I are closing on our investment property tomorrow. I'm very, very excited. So the knowledge that we've been absorbing from here, I am actually putting to work. So I'm very, very excited today.
Beautiful. Look, everybody, do a little victory dance for Stacey. Housewarming party coming. Yep. Congratulations, Stacey. Stan, where are you, and who are you going to hug today?
Hey, I am right here. In the now. I guess that's what time it is. You didn't ask me that, but I'm right here, Doc. And I'm gonna hug two people today. I'm gonna hug my wife and my mommy.
Oh, living on the wild side. Two people today.
Yeah,
okay.
2 people.
I love it. Well, I am so thankful for everybody. Good morning, Cece. Cece's here as well. I'm so thankful that you are here because I want your help with this conversation. I didn't ask the question for today's topic, assuming or coming from a place of I have an answer. I came from it from the place of, here's something for us to play with, everybody. Let's all massage this question and see what we all can come up with. So the question for today is, are channeled texts an authentic source of wisdom? Now, let me first define, you know how I am about assumptions, right? So let me first define, so that we can operate from the same sheet of music, what a channeled text is. A channeled text is a document or a piece of work. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be text, to be honest with you, now that we live in this multimedia world. But a channeled text is a piece of work that has been written by or expressed by a human being like you and me, and whose source, they say, whoever the author is, has been spiritually inspired. So it's kind of like a download. It's kind of like inspired from, downloaded from, uploaded from, however you want to call it. They don't claim to be the source of that information. They claim to just have been like the dictating secretary, as it were. I just took it down. It came from above, right? So with that said, one could argue, I can see Gio grinning about this now. One could argue, well, then everything is a channel text. because you get inspiration from nature, you get inspiration from the world at large, you get inspiration from your relationships, you get inspiration from your own spiritual source or your own intellectual, life, et cetera, et cetera. One could argue that. The distinction, however, is that usually channel texts are attributed to a spiritual source. Right? It's not just inspiration, it's direct communication. And once again, one could argue, if you're really awake to your own spiritual nature, everything that comes out of your mouth would be channeled in that, if you're using that definition, right? And so how do we know what's authentic wisdom and what is just somebody made that up? Well, I'm going to tell you what I use as a metric for that, and then I want to open it up so that we can discuss what you use, if you use anything as a measuring metric for that. And that for me is universal truth has to be universal. It can't just apply to one person or one group of people. It has to be universal. Is this true of the human condition at large, right? Is it true just of me? Is it true just of Geo? Or is it true of all humans? Barring any kind of disability, barring any kind of anomaly, we all have noses on our faces. That's a universal truth, right? And there are also universal truths, not just about our physical makeup, but also about our spiritual makeup. And when I can recognize that, it doesn't have to be my culture, it doesn't even have to be in my language. There's a message that comes through that I resonate with, that strikes me as true, like this is across cultures, across civilizations, across socioeconomic differences or cultural nuances, etc. That's how I deem it an authentic wisdom. Also something that connects me to humanity at large. If it's something that makes one group of people feel more special than another, or create or sustain a hierarchy, I tend to dismiss those, because for me, wisdom is one of bringing humanity together, bringing people and beings, organisms, the earth, the planet, and all sentient beings together in a sense of connectedness, in a sense of oneness. So I look for oneness as a theme as well. If I don't see that, then it's like, okay, you made that up. That doesn't ring true for me. And I don't know how to explain it. It's not a scientific formula. This is one of the reasons why it is important for you to be connected with your multiple levels of intelligences. Your intellectual intelligence isn't the only intelligence that you have access to. You also have access to your own intuition, to your own sentient intelligence. And so for me, that cognitive, sentient, intuitive intelligence, it's like this gut feeling that says, yeah, no, that's not it. And it doesn't mean that that's not it, like you're wrong. It means like that's not it, like I don't resonate with it, right? So there's a difference between making someone wrong because you don't resonate with something versus just owning your own resonance and saying that's not for me. So I want to open it up for everybody, and let's talk about this channel text. Let me give you some examples too of what I mean so that you understand what we're talking about. So obviously the first example that comes to mind is the Bible. The Bible and the Quran are two of the most world popular texts, channeled texts, that were reportedly written as direct divine inspiration. There are others. Some modern ones include Neil Donald Walsh has written a 3-volume series called Conversations with God, and their ancillary spin-off texts after that. There is a series of books written by a man called Paul Selig, S-E-L-I-G. One of the most popular ones from the last 50 years is Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara, I forget her last name, Barbara Marciniak or something like that. What is it? Marciniak. I forgot how to pronounce it. Barbara Marciniak. And so some of these texts, when you read them, they all pretty much say the same thing, which kind of harkens me back to the word universe. Uni meaning one and verse meaning song. There's the same song, one song, saying that we are all connected, that we are all part of a big whole, and that we all have our part to play in that unification and in that connectedness. So let me hear from you. What have been some of the channel texts that you have been exposed to, and how do you discern whether it's a source of authentic wisdom for you? Love to hear. Yes, Gio.
I love the possibility of this conversation. I really, really do. What was coming up for me as you were speaking, it was sort of like you were guiding my train of thought. You were sort of like giving language in the way in which I see things. At the beginning, I thought it was me who was writing. And then I thought, at the beginning in my writing, I thought, well, I have something to share. Then I started discovering, maybe creativity is about listening, and then writing what I'm listening. Mm-hmm. And then later, I started to discover that maybe something needs to be said, and when I'm in silence, I get to channel what needs to be said. Obviously, I do get to filter things. I do get to bring myself into the whole thing. And as I am maturing in this being human, in this possibility of being human, I'm really seeing for myself that everything is spiritual. Truly, everything is, isn't it? Like that's the question I ask myself all the time, isn't it? Everything is spiritual. And many times I write a lot for business purposes, but every now and then I write to create an opening to what I'm experiencing as a human being. And I am, in those moments, I am clear that I, like everyone else, has access to the eternal. In those moments, at any moment, I am clear. When I saw my children's hand for the first time, when they were tiny little hands with the tiny little nails and that perfect thing, I was clear that kind of art, that kind of, I don't know how to say it, that beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It is something being channeled by something. And also when I am just sitting in silence and listening to what can be said, also I am clear that all of it, perhaps all of it, is spiritual. Anyway, that's what I was thinking that's what I wanted to share as you were speaking.
That's awesome. Thank you, Gio. It kind of reminds me of this very popular quote that we are all just a spiritual being having a human experience, as opposed to human beings, right, having a spiritual department, as it were, right? Sorrel.
Good morning, Dr. Monikah. You mentioned the Bible, you mentioned the Quran, and so much of what I'm discovering that I believe is a source of wisdom has to do with where I was born and how I was raised. So from your perspective, how much of what one believes is a source of wisdom and a channeled text that actually is given by my culture and how I was born and where I was raised and what's blasphemous to me and what's not? What are your thoughts on the matter?
Well, I think that under one specific dogma or one specific mode of thinking or religion, there are certain rules and certain things that are acceptable and certain things that are not. And every institutionalized culture has that, whether it's the government, schools, education, the way we do athletics, etc. In order for people to gather and do something in a group of many, there have to be some protocols, some accepted behaviors, some not accepted behaviors, and the punishment that goes therein or with those broken rules, so that you can get some compliance. Otherwise, you can't really control people if they're running all over the place. However, when you are viewing people as themselves creation of the divine, that there is no quote unquote imperfection in them, then even when they are, and this is a highly melanated culture thing, this is not a Western thing. But when someone goes outside of those parameters, most melanated cultures and most spiritual cultures bring that person into accountability, not to punishment. Because then what tends to happen is you get to explore your own thinking, your own mode of thinking, your own, what did you think the price was going to be, right? So it's like you explore how you had it, so that then from that awareness, you can decide to make or not make different decisions. And then people can make different decisions about how to be with you, but not from a place of punishment, but from a place of awareness and accountability. When you grow up in a certain culture, when you grow up in a certain country, in a certain generation, in a certain decade, you typically grow up with whatever it is that was assigned to you, whatever the religion was that your parents were, that's the one you are. And unless you take the road less traveled, that's typically the religion and the culture that you're going to stay with throughout your life. And you hardly sometimes ever question it. Because of the advent now in the 21st century of multimedia, the internet, and we have access to people around the world that we otherwise would not have had access to even 30 years ago. Now we are exposed to different ways of thinking and different challenging assumptions that have us thinking about how we have it. That was not possible 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so now we have a greater opportunity to check ourselves and to adopt ways of thinking and cultures and religions and traditions that perhaps we didn't grow up with, but resonate more deeply with us. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It begins to address it. And it's, I don't know that it's a question that has an answer. So it's real that my culture, my upbringing, the rules and everything impact what I believe is a channeled text. So I have a follow-up question. You talked about universality. Is it true for everyone as an acid test for what is a source of wisdom? Could the source of wisdom, could another acid test be actually the person that's channeling it? Do you find that perhaps the credibility of a channeled text also depends on who it's being channeled through? Is there a certain amount of purity or some condition that someone must meet to be someone who's channeling a text of wisdom?
I don't know. I don't think so. Not for me. There have been plenty of people who have channeled amazingly holy, transcendent things, and they've been drug addicts or drunkards, or have had a history of domestic violence, or have had a history of estranged relationships with their children, or whatever the case may be. I think that sometimes we perform goodness in order to gain authority and visibility for our work. But I think that the messiness of our individual human journey is what gives it relatability and credibility. Because if you haven't lived through anything, if you haven't struggled through anything, if you've just been perfect and everything is just hunky-dory and everything has a little red bow on it, I don't believe you. So I need to see the skid marks in order for me to say that this is coming from experience, that this is coming from a humble place and not just pontifications.
I got it. Thank you, Dr. Monikah.
That's something. Gio, back to you.
Oh, I love this conversation. Love the places where it takes me. There was something that was showing up in your interaction with Sorel. there is what I was pointing to as a human being, that when I'm writing, I'm clear that there's something that I can connect to. And you were, you guys were putting two worlds together for me to that I wanted to say something about. One is the world of the messiness of one's life doesn't mean I don't have access to listening and maybe writing what can be said, what's being channeled, even though I had a really messy life. And also it doesn't prevent me from connecting to the eternal. And also my culture and when at the time I was born, it shapes what the hell I'm going to write and what the hell I'm going to say. Very much, given those books that have, like the Bible and the Quran and many others, that, you know, just kind of share things from the times that they were dealing with. And at this, now they're ludicrous, they're crazy things they said, they're absurd, awful things they said in those books. But at the time, it wasn't so awful. It was what it was. Was it that at that time, awful things were channeled from the eternal? Highly unlikely. Really highly unlikely. In my way of looking at life, right? How do I know anything? What do I know? I know nothing, right? I don't know what I'm talking about. But, you know, the Quran has some really crazy things, and the Bible just like that. And every book I read that someone has claimed being channeled says some crazy things. Right. Is it the eternal going crazy with that moment and just, no, I think that the aspect, it seems to me that the aspect of being human while listening to what's being said shapes a little bit of the messiness that it is to be human. The messiness of being human shapes maybe what is being heard. I don't know. That's what I wanted to share.
I love that you're saying that, because to your point, that's where discernment comes in. There's a part in the Bible, for example, that talks about mixing fabrics and mixing, you know, you can't eat this with that, and you can't, and it's like, well, that would make sense for that culture. But again, that doesn't pass the universality test, right? It's like, is it true for this culture? Or was it just useful over then, you know? And so this is where the discernment piece comes in. And that's why we
stoning women and stuff like that. That was crazy.
Oh, exactly. Cherie?
Good morning, Grand Rising. I read something recently and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Divine spiritual, you are a divine spiritual being attempting to cope with a divine human awakening. That hit me like a brick.
Really?
Yeah, I really was looking
at it. Tell me what spoke to you about that.
I was looking at it, or in general, not it, but just my life of doing the opposite. I'm this human trying to find my divine spiritual being, versus thinking about how we came, you know, we're born into this earth as a divine spiritual, and then we encounter these human experiences, and that's what we're really trying to cope with.
Yeah. A little bit of a rug pulled under you, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a powerful realization. Do you agree with it? Does it resonate with you?
100%. I teach Kemetic yoga, and when I think about us being in an equivalent of child's pose, right? And when we're in the womb, we were actually, we've been practicing yoga all our lives. How we start off is in this position that, you know, taking to coming into the human existence, we're calling it this, but we were doing this even before we knew what we were doing, before it had a name.
Well, I probably would have enjoyed my children's movements in my womb a lot more if I called it yoga instead of whatever it was that they were doing. I was like, oh, he's just doing yoga in there. That's a great reframe. I love what you're sharing, though, about the juxtaposition of a human being attempting to connect to their divine nature versus a divine being coping with their human nature. And I resonate with that, with the latter as well, because if I may, this just became relevant just now. I was just talking to my sister yesterday. She's been dealing with a lot of grief from her husband passing away. And she asked me yesterday, how do you center yourself on what you believe? And I said, I've just seen too much to not know there's divine order. I've seen too many miracles, too many similarities between the micro and the macro, down to the cellular level. I mean, can you imagine the tree of life is the same as your spinal cord? Too many perfect messages at the perfect time from the perfect source. Too much makes so much sense to me that whatever doesn't make sense, I attribute it to, I haven't gotten to that chapter of the book yet. It feels better, lawful even, to recognize that just as when I was a child and I had to do something I didn't understand or agree with, but mom and dad did have their reasons, however imperfect or inconsistent, how much truer of a divine creator to have a certain order or purpose or reason, and my understanding or agreement isn't required and is only available at my own maturity and curiosity. And that's kind of what we're talking about today in terms of a channeled text and authentic wisdom, that you have to be able to explain it and justify it for yourself. It can't just be that somebody handed something to you and you believe it because it came from that person or from the source. You've got to be able to own it in order for you to be able to walk it. What else say you?
I just want to say thank you for that. And that was another brick. That was, I'm processing that. That was, wow, amazing.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sherry, can you write down that quote you on the chat? That quote that you just shared with us. That was really great. I really love that. Thank you.
Will do.
Who else has something as we wrap up? Stan, I see you contemplating.
Doc, I don't know. I'm telling you, I'm just really thinking about this thing. I'm trying to really run it through my mind. I think I believe, and it's not really I think it. I do believe that we all channel. You know, we all are, because we all have that portion of us that is spirit. You know, that is in tune and is connected to the source, even if we may not feel that we or even really be so in tune to it, that we come from it and we cannot cannot separate ourselves from it. So I believe that we all are channeling at some point. And I'm just trying to find that place that I'm more tuned into it. That's where I am.
I find that when I remove any kind of external stimuli, as some of you know, that's what's going on right now with me. I do an annual fast. And so when I remove, it's amazing to me how much of our culture is centered around food. Like all of it, not just the digestive process. That's just what happens when you're done, right? But you have to like meal prep and go grocery shopping and then cook it and then serve it and then eat it and then plan the dinner and arrange for the lunch appointment and blah, blah, blah. And then go there. It takes an hour to get there, it takes an hour to get back. And it's just like, just centered around, let's just have some food together, right? And when you remove all of that, not only is your digestive system at rest, which then renders your energy available for other things, but now your thinking is also available. And now you have different ways of connecting with people that have nothing to do with just a social event, that it could just be about the intimacy and the connection with that person, and not using food or tea or coffee or whatever as an excuse. And so when I remove these pieces and these distractions and these dopamine hits like social media scrolling, etc., it's like, what am I available for? What wants to come through that I wouldn't be available for had I been entertaining of these other things? And some of you speak other languages here. I speak, among other things, English and Spanish. And one of the things that that struck me, one time my father was trying to discipline my nephews, and one of them was having a meltdown. And he goes into the toy room, my father, and he says, "¿Qué te pasa?" I think you guys have heard me say this story before. "¿Qué te pasa?" And I heard it differently that day, because typically the way that I have translated "¿Qué te pasa?" is "What's wrong with you?" or "What's the matter with you?" But I heard it quite literally, "What is passing through you?" And I think that is ultimately the message, the beauty of channeling anything. What is passing through you? And how can you then express it and contribute it in such a way that it impacts others and it lifts everybody that you come in contact with? I think that's the ultimate test of it. So I am going to wrap it up. We've hit the 30-minute mark. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us. Thank you for entertaining this very juicy question. I entreat you to stay with it. I'm sure more wisdom will come as you contemplate it more deeply. And remember to love generously, to give of yourself, to laugh. I want you to cacaw. Look that word up, cacaw. Guffaw, that's another one. I want you to laugh ostentatiously. Eat more plant-based, sleep at least 7 hours, stress less, and of course, move your tail feather, shake your body. Do you know that shaking is the way that a lot of us shake off trauma, like literally shake off trauma. You've seen dogs too, like when they've gone through something, they shake it off, like, okay, new moment, right? So move your body, and of course, audit your assumptions, check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Yes.
One love.